Hey everybody, this is Sherry Winn. Welcome to Olympic Minds Leadership Without Limits. This is for people who want to rise above the norm, for leaders who are not going to settle for mediocrity, but really want to go into mastery. And for those leaders and those people out there in the world who are like, you know what, success isn't enough. I want to move from success to significance. So I'm a two-time Olympian, national championship basketball coach, author of 3 leadership books and more coming out. And today we're going to share a wonderful conversation with Maureen Nimmick. She and I met on my first project, the book called Winning Leadership, 7 Secrets to Being a Truly Powerful Leader. And what I loved about Maureen was the fact that she showed up as passionate. She showed up as somebody who wanted to learn. She showed up as somebody who really cared beyond herself, and she's looking at that. So we're going to talk about a book she's writing right now, along with a lot of other questions. So I'm going to allow Maureen to tell us a little bit more about herself. Go ahead, Maureen.
Thank you for that warm introduction, Sherry. And I am very passionate about a lot of different things. I'm going to give you a little personal, and then I'll give you a little business, because I think we have to remember we are people first.
Love it.
And so I have 2 adopted foster children, and so that has given me skills beyond compare, whether or not it's dealing with schools or medical or just really advocating for them. And then I also rescue boxers, the dogs, not the fighters.
I love it.
And then in the corporate world, from that standpoint, my most recent role was with Contour Brands, which is the iconic makers of Wrangler, Lee, and Rock and Republic, where I was the CISO's chief of staff. But currently, I've taken a bend to the consulting world, and so I've found a number of projects, and we'll talk a little bit about those, where the projects are finding me.
Nice.
And just people reaching out going, do you think you could create a generative AI governance project management office? Yeah, I could do that. Or do you think you could come up with these kinds of, something for the MSPs? So I have just found it very enriching that I'm filling needs that people are just reaching out to and saying, well, we think you could do this. And so oftentimes I'm amazed that I know as many people as I do. And, we never really think about our reputation, but I thought, well, wow, people have noticed. I've been on the speaking engagement. I was out in Vegas a couple of times at Infotech, and about IT risk quantification, which is boring to anybody unless they really love it, as well as visions. And so I really enjoy kind of, spreading the word about how do we reduce risk in this very, very risky world.
Wow, that's a lot of stuff. And I know, as soon as you say like cybersecurity and AI, my mind is like, bah! But I do know this. We have to go forward. We can't go backwards. And this is the new world. So I want to start really just talking about your book that you're writing, because when you talked about it, I thought this is the topic of something that we need to discuss. Please tell them about your book and what the premise is behind it. What do you really want to do with this book?
So I've been in the industry, for a minute, as we like to say, for a long time. And what I've noticed is, and with Michigan Council of Women in Technology and SIM Detroit and all of these programs, and even ISOC, I'm over on the board of Detroit chapter, and we're always having, girls in tech, girls who code, cyber patriot for girls, and I look at them, I'm thinking, when I started, and I kind of look back and see people say, well, it's so hard to get into tech, it's so hard to get into cyber, and I'm like telling them, guess what? When it's always hard to get into tech, nothing ever shows up on your front door, and back on how I was able to get up, and I thought, why were there so many women when I was starting out in the first 10, 15 years of my career? What happened? And then I started talking to people about, well, what was your story and what happened? And so I thought, well, I think that we need to figure this out. And then when I started peeling the layer back, and I am a strong proponent of all of these programs that we have, but then I wondered, are we doing a disservice when we say, well, we're going to have this group of only girls who code because, then they don't have to worry about the boys taking over. And I thought, well, in the real world, we have to deal with all kinds of people. There is no, cocoon that we can say, well, we only want to do X, Y, or Z from that standpoint. Right. And then, so how do we look at these programs, but then improve them in such a way so that they are able to launch into the real world and, and not get shell-shocked? But I'm also very aware that there are going to continue to be some limitations for women for various and sundry reasons, and I'm exploring that as well. And then I'm looking at some of the experiences that I had in my own career on misturns and what happened and what can we do to help encourage women to not only enter but to stay in technology.
I think that's great. What I love about this is it's really about the resilience factor, right? So women in tech wasn't a big thing, and then somehow women like you said, hey, I'm going to find my way through this. I'm going to get to where I want to go. I'm not going to accept no as an answer. I'm not going to let the numbers or the data determine for me how I'm going to live. So let's reach back into that. So when you were, growing up, science wasn't a big thing for women. Tech was not a big thing for women, right? It's the same thing I experienced as a basketball coach. You could play the game, but you weren't supposed to coach the game for women. So tell me, what was their biggest challenge that you had breaking in? Okay. What was the mindset that you developed that helped you move through that?
Okay, well, I'm going to have to give you a small sidebar, and then it was just when you talked about the basketball coach. So when I was in junior high, I was actually on the basketball team, and we did have a woman coach who
Nice.
Was absolutely fabulous, and she came up with this plan. We had 2 plays. And one play was any odd number, and the other play was any even number. So we had 2 plays to learn, and we were undefeated, all 8 games or whatever that was. And I laughed because, they would think 7. Well, what's 7 look like? 1. And I'm thinking, well, 1 is the same play as 7, but we were able to keep that. And so at the time, I didn't really think about that I had a woman coach because this is who we had. And she was wonderful, and I was not a good player, but that's okay because it's all part of being the team. So it's interesting when you mention that, and then I think about it was just organic, it was natural. Here she was. We didn't think about it. We didn't think it's a woman, it's a man, it's a person of color, it's a person whose English is not their first language. That wasn't really in our sphere of what we thought about.
Right.
But to go back on how I got into technology, so, growing up in Michigan, went to high school, took that, wonderful exam, the tests that they give you. Oh, well, what should your career be? And so, if you say you want to be in the outdoors, they always tell you should be a forest ranger. I don't know how many jobs for forest rangers there were. And so I answered all of the questions, and I sat down with my counselor, and my numbers, there was a quadrant. It put me in what I'm going to call the Northwest quadrant. And that was a desert of roles. There was not one job in that quadrant.
Let's start with the beginning of saying there's nothing you can do. Like you're just gonna have to sweep floors.
And so what am I going to? He said, well, that means you can do everything. I thought, well, no, that does not mean I can do everything. So when I went to college, I took the decision. I said, I'm just going to start taking all these different classes in all these different topics, and something will stick. And my college counselor said, that is the stupidest thing I have ever heard, and you will never amount to anything. Well, being a rather stubborn person, I said, well, we'll see about that. And I took art classes. I learned how to see black and white and see color, and knew that I might have some skill, but I will never have talent. I took sociology and love and marriage and all these different kind of courses. And then I took a class that was called Introduction to Data Processing. That's how long ago it was, back when it was called data processing. I was like, well, this is kind of cool. And then I took basic programming, and then I took Fortran programming and COBOL 1 and COBOL 2. And all of a sudden I said, hey, I like this stuff.
Nice.
And got my degree, and it was a very small program in a private college out here. And there was 12 of us in this program, which just tells you on what a large program it was. And only 2 of us got jobs in the industry.
Wow.
Because at that point in time, they wanted experience and not education. And then people with experience were complaining they didn't get education either. But I was very fortunate, and I had an internship at Ford Warner where I was able to do some computing things. So when I went to the job fair at Chrysler, and again, to go back into history, it was when it was in the hotel suite. So you were in the hallway and they looked at your resume. And then if they circled something and let you go into the room, now you're in. Okay.
Well, so I want to go back just a little bit, because I think there's two things that you said which people need to hang their hat on. Number one is when you were in high school and they're like, well, look, there's this quadrant that's just a desert. Like, you're really not in alignment with anything. I love what your counselor said. And what he said was, it means you can do everything. So imagine if that same person would have said, well, you're really not qualified for anything. So the fact that the door was open, you're qualified for everything, which I think gave you the opportunity to then go to college. And when that counselor said, you can't take just whatever you want, like that's ridiculous. You have to, but you're like, but I can, because I know that I'm qualified for everything. So I think that those are the mindset shifts that I think we should be interested in, which is understanding the limitless canvas that we have in front of us, right? It's limitless. And if we can grasp onto the idea that it's limitless, and we get to explore that canvas, and then we get to decide, where am I going to go with this? And how am I going to use this canvas in my life? Those are the things I heard. So for you, Maureen, what was it that allowed you to, the moment that the college counselor said, well, you can't do this? What was it that allowed you to say, yes, I can? Was that something that you grew up learning, or was it just as an innate thing that you had? Tell us more about that.
So I had an interesting dichotomy of parents. So for my mother, I was never good enough. And for my father, I was brilliant.
Wow. That's a flex.
So my father thought that we were all, we were Picassos and we were brainiacs. And with my mother, if I had all A's and an A-, we'd go out to dinner and celebrate. And she would say, what can we do to get that A- up to an A? So one is, I learned the perseverance of, you've got to keep striving and keep striving. Yet through my father, I had a very good sense of self-worth.
Right.
And so that uniqueness really put me into it's a problem that can be solved. We can make this happen. And then my parents divorced when I was 14, which kind of, rocked the world, because back then it was very, unusual. And actually I got college scholarships because they said I came from a broken family. I said, well, we're not broken, we're just different. And that piece helped as well, because obviously financially I was going to need to, to get things. I mean, I did essays, but that was the whole part, is strive to do better. Mm-hmm. A- can get better. And I think when you talk about that Olympic mindset, and you watch these athletes just perform and continue to practice and practice and practice, and you're like, it looks almost perfect. Well, when you are in competition, and business is a competition,
certainly is.
You need to bring your A game, every single time.
Yeah, I love that you had both, because I think what happens, you got the balance in there. If it would have been only your mother's voice saying that you're not enough, without balance by your father saying, well, you're brilliant and you're a Picasso and if it would have been balanced, and I've seen many people like this, Maureen, and you probably have too, believing that you're not enough and yet striving to be good. It's like you're creating a gap within yourself that you can never get where you want to go, because that inner voice saying, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough. The balance that you received allowed you to really live a different world, to live a different life, because you had the balance, because you weren't beating yourself up all the time believing you weren't good enough. So you had that balance between parents.
Yes, and we have to use this in business all the time, because you're going to get projects that are going to be shot down. One of everybody's got what they said like a secret talent or superpower, and the two superpowers that I feel that I have is, one is I have a very good memory of things. And so when somebody's like, well, what were we talking about last year? I'm like, oh, well, this is what was happening. This is what was going on, which is very, very helpful. And the second thing is, I have ideas. And I remember I'd be interviewing and I'd say, I will have 100 ideas for you and you might only like 2 of them. But if you like 2 of them, it's 2 more than we had. And I had a manager at General Motors who I didn't even work for him, but I would just come in, I'd meet with him once a month and I'd say, okay, here's things that you should think about doing in your department. And he would make acronyms of them. And sometimes they'd be STLLG, whatever. But I said, this is what I come up with. And I love the ideas, but if they don't work, I'm not crushed.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's wrong place, wrong time, wrong culture. But that does not stop you from coming up with new ideas. Because
so the idea of identifying your superpowers, right? And knowing that you have superpowers. So many of us, and I'm going to say me included for a long time, even though people will look at me and go, come on, like you were All-American, you're a valedictorian at your college, you were 2-time, Olympian, and I'm like, yeah, I didn't know. Like it was always an inner fight with myself. I was fighting with myself all the time. I didn't know I had superpowers. Like nobody said, oh my gosh, here are your superpowers. So we all have superpowers. So let's start with that premise. We all have superpowers. And those are the things that we need to identify and the things that we need to use to move ourselves forward. So in your superpowers, is this something that you just recognize as you kind of went along in life and you're like, oh, I'm really good at this? Is this something that was pointed out to you by other people? How did you come to know them and label them as your superpowers?
I will have to defer to peers and leadership who recognized this in me and would make comments. Like I talked about my friend, Stuart McCubry from General Motors. And when he would write them down, he's like, well, these are ideas. And I was like, well, he's writing them down. So they have value, whether he does them or not. They have value. And every month I came up with new ones, maybe 3 or 4. And eventually I ended up working for him, and I had probably some of the toughest projects. And he would just give me, and go to work on this, and then go work on this. And here we have a SOX deficiency, and we're going to have to put it in our 10K if we don't fix it. Oh yeah, okay, we got 25,000 interfaces that don't comply. Okay, let's have at it. Because I had the confidence going, and he says, I can't believe you can do all this work. I said, well, you gave it to me, so I must be able to do it.
I love that answer. You gave it to me, so I must be able to do it. I mean, the superpowers, what you just identified, I think is really important for people who are listening, which is, listen, if you're a leader, and we're all leaders somehow, like whether we're leading our, kids, we're leading somehow, maybe you're a mom who picks up kids on a bus route, and you decide to take these kids instead to school, whatever it is, we're leading, and we have that opportunity to either build up people or destroy people. And it's something that's a power that we hold. It's so critical that we understand that what we say, every word we say, has a meaning to the person who's receiving it. Now, we should learn in our life not to give people that kind of power over us, but we don't know that when we're young. We allow people to get our brains and to get into our self-images and all the things. Yeah, the power of a leader to really help somebody recognize their superpower and to lean into that is huge. So tell me about how you use that in your leadership roles. How do you help people identify their superpowers? How do you help those people use them, recognize them within themselves, and to build the confidence so they can really, like you said, there's an answer because you gave it to me. You trusted me so much that there had to be a solution.
So I'm going to go back, and probably one of the most challenging roles that I have to, thank the CIO health system that I worked for giving me is ran an application team, and we called ourselves the self-cleaning oven, and we had materials management, and we had pharmacy, and we were cool. When our systems went down, we were all hands on deck. I mean, we were very smug. And so my CIO decided, your team is way too smug. So he simultaneously gave me every broken team in his department. So I had identity and access management, I had field support, I had the network group. Our network was going down multiple times per day. And the field support people would disappear and you couldn't reach them, because they'd be in some area, so they knew it was a dead zone and you couldn't contact them, and just a lot of different things that were going on. And these are all areas that, of course, I didn't know anything about. I came from applications. I know how to manage application teams. And so I sat down with each team and I was very authentic. I said, I do not know what you do. I am not the expert. My job is not to become the expert, because we have you. I said, but what my role is to do is to remove every single barrier so that you can be very successful. And so I would have meetings, and I'll talk about the network one because I think that that's very germane. And so we had the network team, what's going down, what's going on. One of the people on the network was hated and despised by everybody in IT and loved by the business. So during an outage, I said, well, let me tag along. Let me learn something. And so she goes down and the nurses see her and they're like, they want to hug her because she is going to bring the network back up. And she was in the wiring closet and goes, do. I was like, well, what did you do? And she says, well, because the load extender goes down, it's kind of shaky, and then the power weird things happen. And so I just have to go and reset it with a paper clip. I'm like, okay, network paper clip. I said, what would solve this problem? She said, well, we had uninterruptible power supplies. Well, then the network would be clean. So I'm like, well, how many wiring closets do we have? 25. How much do they cost? $2,000 each. Well, guess who had $50,000 worth of UPSs delivered within the next 2 weeks? All of a sudden, the network's perfect. But part of it was, I'm asking them, what's wrong? You have the solution. Hey, this is a great solution. This is wonderful. And then we had somebody else who was running side business during the day. I mean, I'd come up to his desk and he'd be shushing me because he'd be on the phone with his other, with his side customers, which we didn't have a policy against it. But I'm like, yeah, not during business hours. And one day he disappeared. And so our next team meeting, I'm like, so, Randy, where were you on Wednesday? And I'm saying this in a team meeting in front of everybody because it's a group dynamic. I said, well, I was at an IBM router webinar. I said, well, that's nice. We're a Cisco shop. But you know what is it's always good to learn something else. So why don't you take the next 10 minutes and tell us everything that you learned?
Nice.
Well, his face turned pale. But the important part was everybody else on the team now knew that I knew, and they did not have to cover for him. They did not have to turn him in. And so I said with him later, I said, you can have this job, you can have your other job. Just pick. You're a good person, but I just need you here. And, within a couple months he left, which was fine. That did more for the team. And I did like the hardest working group. They came up with the ideas. They had the ideas. They just needed to know that their ideas were going to go someplace.
Yes.
And that we were all pulling in the same direction.
What you said is like, I don't have to be the expert. Like, I don't have to be the expert in the room. And so I think that part of having that Olympic level mindset is knowing, like having the confidence to know that you don't have to be the expert, that you don't have to have the answers, that you don't have to be the one. And where a lot of leaders fail is they get into the situation and they think that they have to have all the answers and they have to have all the knowledge. Well, what that does is that disempowers everybody around you. And that's why things can't get done, is because you're so busy disempowering people by trying to prove your worthiness, trying to prove your smarts, trying to prove that you deserve your title. It's hard for people to then work for you. So starting with the idea that, great minds don't have to prove themselves and they just have to empower others. You gave us a couple of great techniques that you use to help empower other people. So what is the most important technique that you have to help empower other people?
I think, and I'm going to actually use a more recent example that I had at Contour. And that is, well, there's two things for it. One is take people where they are and lead them to where they can be. And then the second part, and this wasn't Contour, but I thought about it, is know when it's not a good fit and stop trying to push the rope. And the second one is much more painful because now we're talking about involving human resources and PIPs and other things when you've given people that opportunity to be successful, and it just isn't a good fit.
I think that's hard for a lot of people. I have a coaching client who kept trying to be in her job. Like, I'm in this job. Wasn't passionate about the job, even though she'd been successful in all these other areas, wasn't passionate about her job, found obstacles everywhere she went, didn't have the boss above her who was super supportive of her. And she's like, I've got to figure this out. And I'm like, well, this wasn't the exact conversation, but it's like, okay, do you fit? Like, do you fit where you are? She goes, you don't understand. Like, I've always been successful in everything I've done. I said, I understand that. Sometimes we're not successful because we're in an environment that is not like us. We're not fitting because it's not who we are. And we're trying to be with people who are not like us. And we're trying to do a job that's not in alignment with who we are. So, and so finally she's like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do next. I said, well, it doesn't matter, but what you're doing right now is not helping you. Your confidence is getting less and less every day, and your anxiety is getting higher every day. So let's do some discovery. And what happened was she finally had the courage to leave. I mean, they didn't fire her. She had the courage to leave. And that's when she opened up her mind to other possibilities. And all of a sudden she's getting flooded with all these calls and potential to move forward into something that was more aligned with herself. So that power, I think, the fear, so we get stuck in the fear. If I don't do this, then I won't be able to do X. I think that's part of what a good leader helps people do, is to learn, look, we're not a good fit. And it's okay. That doesn't mean that you're unworthy. It doesn't mean you're not good enough. It's just not the fit here. Let's find a fit for you.
And it is challenging. And I think it's the edge on how much support do you provide, and at what point in time do you make that realization? Because I had one where I went into a role, and as a favor, my leaders had filled my open slots. And it was a very technical role, and the person that filled its resume had teal ink with clouds of things that people said with LinkedIn. I am certain that she is very qualified for different jobs, but not for this one. And I thought, technical people don't use teal ink. I mean, in general, there were some red flags. And the first thing she said, well, I'm not really technical. I'm like, well, this is a technical role. So just to let you know, this is a technical role, and these are the expectations. And, and she didn't even make it the 90 days. And then I talked to the leadership, said, well, please don't try to help me. Because you don't understand, and like you said, it's not that cyber is technical or IT is technical, because all fields have technical expertise, and being able to choose somebody new would have been much more helpful than going in and saying, okay, well, here's the new person, and the first thing they did was had to ask somebody to leave.
Right. Well, I think that's part of the Olympic level mindset to me, is understanding the difference between when things will work and when things won't work. Like that ability to not put so much time and energy and effort into something that's not going to work. It's getting that stuck mindset that I have to win no matter what. Well, sometimes the win is making a pivot. Sometimes the win is saying, all right, let's stop this project. This is not the direction we want that we want to go. Let's just remove the project. People are like, but we spent time, energy, and money. Yes, we have. And if we keep doing it, we're going to now waste time, energy, and money. So it's having that ability to stop doing the things that aren't working, right? And making that understanding that what I'm doing is I'm beating my head against the wall. And if I hit it harder, the wall is still going to hold steady. So what do you do when you get to that place? Like, you've probably been in those places where you're like, this is just it's not going to happen. It's not going to work. What enables you to move forward and to drop that into make the pivot or the U-turn to move forward?
So, I mean, it is like you and so many, we've gone through so many different, trainings and assessments. And one of the assessments that I went through said one of my traits was the ability to stand alone.
Yay!
And so sometimes you have to be the person who stands up and says, this is not working. Mm-hmm. And we have tried X, Y, and Z, and we have invested. And it's not just with people, it's with projects. We have a funded project. And so if we don't produce this application, we have failed. No, let's just stop the bleeding and get the packaged software because the homegrown stuff isn't working, or you need to be able to cut your losses. And you are correct that it's very difficult, because then you are publicly admitting that perhaps this wasn't a good idea. I'm like, well, it might have been a good idea at the time, but it certainly is not a good idea now. And we need to be very clear with what this is. The business has changed. Everything has changed. It did not, do what we expected it to do. And so we need to cut our losses.
Yes, the ability to stand alone. I love that, the ability to stand alone, because I think that leaders have to have that, because so many of us have the herd mentality. The whole thing about, you watch cows, and so one cow starts going and the whole cows are like, oh, I don't know what's going on. I gotta go. I don't know where I'm going. But, people are like that. I remember I was a young athlete. We were traveling around the world, playing other teams, and we were in Russia. And so at the time they had this big mall in Moscow. And so, we wanted to go buy stuff from Russia. So and so I'd go, and there'd be these uber long lines to buy a certain thing. Well, not knowing what it was, we thought it was really great because it was a super long line. So you get in the super long line and you would find out it's the same thing that somebody else was selling like 2 stalls down. And you're like, well, why? But it's because people thought it was something good because the line was long, right? And it's the herd mentality. And it's really hard to find people who can stand alone and say, this is what I see. This is what I feel. This is what I notice. And that's a superpower for people. And I don't know, Murray, do you think it can be taught? Is it a skill that we can teach other people? If we create enough psychological safety, can we create it? Or is it something that's like, you got it or you don't?
And I'm going to go back to that art class that I told you I took in college. You know what? There is skill and there is talent. And you can teach skill to a point. Mm-hmm. But talent is innate. And there have been so many different, schools of thoughts. Oh, you should focus on your weaknesses and strengthen them. And then there's the, strength finders. Well, you should focus on your strengths, and your strengths will become so strong that your weaknesses won't matter, and everything in between. I think that there is a point that you can take some people to, but if you are in your discomfort zone, 7x24, I'm not so sure that, even though on the surface you appear to have garnered this standing alone, I think when you're not true to yourself, it becomes a real challenge. So I do think that there's some wiggle room that you have, but I don't think that you can make that massive change if it just truly is not in your nature.
I agree with you too. I think there's always a point where we can grow ourselves. I believe that. And it's the willingness, how much time are we going to invest in it? How much money are we going to invest in ourselves to get to that next level? And then do we have the psychological safety, which we think is from outside us, and so many companies try to provide the psychological safety which is outside of us. I think the psychological safety must be within us. So if you're going to stand alone, it really means that you've done that personal development to get yourself to the place that you don't fear, like what other people think about you, or they're going to say about you, or whatever that is. So when I talk about personal development, it's one of the things that I believe we all need to invest in. And I think it makes the difference. I think there's probably a place where you grow to a level that's like, Teresa, the next level, it's going to be really challenging, to get over whatever belief systems we have about ourselves, or whatever limiting beliefs that we have, or whatever that is. How do you invest in you? How do you invest in you so that you keep growing, Maureen, so that you keep moving the needle, so that you can become even better?
Well, and there's a lot of different paths that we have, but the best decision I ever made was to have a tribe.
I love it.
So my tribe, and because earlier in my career, I worked, I had these 2 adopted foster kids. There was just like, I felt like I had no time for a tribe. And if I could have changed something, I would have gotten the tribe, that much sooner. But to have peers, not people that I work with, not even people in the same, industry, although, most of them are involved in technology, to have, okay, I'm interviewing for this job and I really don't know what this is. Can we go out to dinner and you can just throw me some curveball questions and then give me just in time feedback? Or I got this company that wants me to do this work and I have no idea how much to charge. So I have people that I can go to. And sometimes we just get together just to not network because we're looking for success, but to network and learn about each other and what we're looking at. And then through their activities, then I can kind of grow myself. Because, and you'll even notice it, at least in the technical seminars, the CISOs and the CIOs, is I'll go there, there will be, here's the tech stuff, but there's less and less. Now it's more, what's the people stuff? How do you get those, those types of things? And I think that there's, value in that as well. And then there's always self-study. I mean, LinkedIn has a wide variety of, articles that you can get in chunks, listening to, podcasts such as this one, where you just get other people's points of view. And there's always gems.
Right.
And maybe the gems are far and few between because it doesn't resonate with you. But I think just the wide variety. I am a passionate reader. I am a passionate listener to podcasts and other people's experiences because we can learn so much. But you're right. You never stop learning because everything's changing. You talked about generative AI. Okay, well, that's something new. We have tariffs coming up. That's new. That impacts us all, whether we know it or not. We have, the world is changing. And so, you have to be aware, you have to understand how to adapt, and you have to grow.
Oh, for sure. I love the idea of the tribe. I think that women especially don't think they have the time for a tribe. And we really need that support. We need people to bounce ideas off of, people that have our backs, people that are there for us when we have a challenge, we're not certain how to move forward. Doesn't mean they're going to make the decisions for us, but they're certainly going to be supportive of us and give us, new ways of looking at things. So Maureen, if there's something that you want to share with people before you leave, if there's one thing that you think would really help people develop the mindset to be a leader without limits, what would that thing be?
If I had to distill it into 2 words, my 2 words would be say yes. Okay. Tough project, say yes. Something that seems like it's beyond your reach, say yes. Somebody asks you to mentor them, say yes. Now, obviously, you still need personal time, but I am where I am because I said yes. And then the second thing that I would say is ask questions. So I guess I have 4 words: say yes and ask questions.
I love that. I love that. You're right, because so many people won't step out of their comfort zone. And if you don't step out of your comfort zone, you're going to get what you've always gotten, right? To move forward, you have to take those chances by saying yes to something that feels a little uncomfortable. It feels a little hard. It feels like there could be failure here. And that's exactly how we grow, right through those things. So last thing, Maureen, how would people, if they wanted to ask you a question, how would they reach you? If they want to eventually buy your book, how would they figure that out, or how would they find that? Tell them how to get a hold of you so that if they're interested in asking you more questions or getting that book when it comes out.
Okay, well, the best way to reach out for me is through LinkedIn. Unless you look really nefarious, I will accept your connection. That's how people who have... Yeah, I'm in cyber. I am going to kind of look and go, well, let's see, you are a Nigerian prince. Not so sure. And then there's a few folks, and there's a lot of fake profiles that come to me. I'm like, yeah, you're a fake profile. And we can begin, the conversation. From the book standpoint, I'm about a year out to having it, but I would suspect that my publisher is going to, push it out on Amazon. And again, I'm certain that when it's published, I'll be talking all about it on LinkedIn. And in fact, one of my to-dos is to try, as I come up with pieces, because I'm getting a lot of input from people in the field, is to just start putting some snippets of it out to gain feedback, because since it's my first book, I want to see what resonates with people. And by sharing and exposing myself, and then I got the opportunity to get some really objective feedback on this resonates or completely doesn't. And that will help shape the book to be very valuable to the most number of people.
Right. Well, folks, I hope that you really listen to the great ideas that Maureen shared today, especially say yes. Say yes, say yes. Like, get out of your comfort zone. That's one of the ways that you can really become that person without limits, when you say yes. And then ask questions, because that doesn't mean you're dumb. It means you're smart. It means that you want to grow more. So many people are afraid to ask because they think that if they ask, that means they don't know something. Well, of course you don't. How do you grow if you can't ask questions? So thank you for being here today. Thank you, Maureen, for all the wonderful tidbits that you shared with us today. And guys, we'll see you next time. Olympic Minds, Leadership Without Limits.
Thanks so much, Sherry. Thanks. Bye.